back to my channel. My name is Allie if you're new here, and on my channel we talk a lot about books, and this is going to be a fully book related video. So we are going to be doing my January wrap-up and my February TBR. Before we get into any of this, I want to mention that I am definitely a mood reader, so this TBR is very ambitious and likely won't happen, but I'm really excited about all of these books. Some of them are rereads, some of them are books I'm in the middle of, so we'll get to it, but first let's talk about the books that I read in January. So not all of these books I own, so I do have my trusty reading journal with me to help me through this, but let's just get right into it. So the first book that I read this month was They Wish They Were Us, and that book was by Jessica Goodman. I gave this book 2 stars. Unfortunately, I was really disappointed by it. It follows a cast of like preppy high schoolers, and they have basically like a high school sorority or fraternity that gets them like answers to questions on tests, and it's like a status thing, and they go through hazing. And throughout all of this, their freshman year, one of their best friends dies. Her boyfriend is taken away on account of murder, and then their senior year, which is the present timeline, it comes out that he may not have been the one who did it. And so it's a murder mystery of trying to figure out what actually happened to her. And I was not surprised by the ending and was pretty let down overall by the book. So I would not say that that was my favorite. Some people really like it, but it was just not for me. The second book that I read in January was A Touch of Malice, and this book is by Scarlett St. Clair, and it's the third book in the Hades and Persephone, A Touch of Darkness series. I absolutely loved this book. I loved the series. I gave this book 4 stars. I can't really go a lot into this book specifically because it is the third book in a series. However, the first book follows our main character Persephone, and she was obviously Persephone. I mean, it's a version of the myth. Basically, in this book, it's a modern day telling as if the gods lived with the humans or with the mortals, and so it's really hard for me to articulate the plot of this book without giving anything away. But basically, Persephone was held captive, I think like Rapunzel style, by her mom, and then she got out to go to college, and her one rule was that she was not to reveal that she was a goddess, and she was not allowed to really fraternize with any of the gods. Of course, she breaks those rules, and in comes Hades. So I thought that it was really good and super enjoyable. The next book that I read was a novella, and it's the third novella in a series called Wanting a Witch. And this book specifically followed our 2 main characters. One of them was a witch and one of them was a vampire, and the witch saved the vampire's life, called somebody to turn her into a vampire basically. And then this is, I think, like 6 years later, the vampire's coming back to thank her and to like make amends basically, and then they fall in love. So I found it to be really enjoyable. I gave it 3 stars just because it was a novella. There wasn't enough information in there for me to rate it higher than that, but I did really enjoy it. The 4th book that I read in January was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This was a reread for me. I've read it twice before, so this was the 3rd time I've read through it. Anticipation for The Stolen Heir that came out in January. I haven't read the rest of the series yet, but I did read the first book, gave it 5 stars, of course. I absolutely adore these books, this series. It was really nice to be back in the world, and just with Jude and Cardan, I just loved it, and it made me super happy. So 5 stars, definitely. Such a good series. If you have not read this series, please pick it up because you will enjoy it. And I have a friend who read this book, didn't like it. I told her that I rated it 5 stars, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna give it another chance. She read this one, and then read the second one, and she said that she likes the second one better. So if you don't like this one, you might want to push through and continue on with the series, because The Wicked King is my favorite in the series, and you might decide that you actually like it. So the next book that I read this month was Finlay by Stephanie Garber. This is the 3rd and final book in the Caraval trilogy, and I gave it 3 stars, unfortunately. I was pretty let down by this series altogether. I expected to really love it. I had owned Caraval for a really long time, and for some reason it just didn't hit the spot for me. It follows our 2 main characters, Scarlett and Donatella, and their sisters, and they go away to this party, carnival, caravel, I don't know exactly what to call it. Basically, it's like a contest, and there are a lot of rules and a lot of magic, and it's very confusing, and you kind of don't know what's happening until it's happened, and then you still aren't sure if that's actually what happened. And I think that I had a hard time following it, but overall it was a pretty solid series, but I wouldn't say it was one of my favorites by any means. Okay, the next book that I read is actually a 2-for-1 deal. I finally picked up the tandem read. So I did do this in the tandem read, which I was really proud of because I didn't think I was going to be able to do it that way. But this is Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I gave these both 5 stars. I adore this series. I adore these characters. I absolutely am obsessed. I was a little bit nervous following Tower of Dawn because if you don't know, Tower of Dawn actually does not follow the main character of the rest of the series. It follows a side character. And I was not so excited about it. And then as soon as I got into it, I was like, damn, I might like this more than Empire of Storms. But overall, I think that it was a very solid read. It took me over a month. Like, it took me a long time. But this is a lot of pages. This is like 1,200 pages. So, of course, it took me a long time. But I highly recommend the Throne of Glass series if you have not picked it up. And if you have, maybe you should reread it because a reread just sounds great. Okay, the next book that I read in January was Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. And I gave this book 4 stars. It's kind of a 4.5 stars, but I'm trying not to do half ratings this year. But this book was everything. It was a lot. There was a lot to it. I had a lot of thoughts reading it. This was the Bibliophile book club that I host with my friend Shay. This was our book club pick for January, and I still don't even have like cohesive thoughts about it. We've had a whole like Zoom call about it. Like, we had our book club, and I read this book like a couple weeks ago, and I just loved it. Like, I will probably always hold this book really dear to my heart just because there's so much that happened. So this book follows our 2 main characters, Yasmin and Josiah, and they have 2 kids together. They own a business together, but they're divorced. And this book follows a lot of heavy topics of grief, depression. There are a lot of trigger warnings, so definitely check those out if you're concerned. But basically, it's a story about them rekindling their romance and realizing what happened and going to therapy and getting help and then seeing if they can fix their family. And I just felt like this was done so well and beautifully, and I feel like Kennedy Ryan did these characters such good justice, and I felt like Josiah was such a sweetheart. He was my favorite character, absolutely, and he just was so tender-hearted, and he went about things really well, and I was just really impressed with this book, and it's going to be a series, so highly recommend Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. Okay, the next book that I read was Lady Smoke by Laura Sebastian, and this is the second book in the Ash Princess series, and I gave it 3 stars as well. This is another one of those fantasy series that it's just pretty like middle of the line. I don't have like any high praise for it. There's not a lot of like big feelings that I have. It's just pretty like middle of the line. It follows our main character Theodosia, and she is a Ash princess in the first book. So basically her whole family and all of her people got conquered by the Kaizen, and he killed her mom, but he kept her to basically have as a trophy and then to punish when he felt like it and use her as like entertainment, I guess. And the first book, Ash Princess, is about her trying to escape this, and the second book, I thought the second book was better than the first book. I'm excited to read Ember Queen, which is the 3rd book in the series, and see what I think, but I was pretty impressed with the second book over the first book, but it was just a pretty like mid series overall, but I did enjoy it. Okay, the next book that I read in January was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, and I think that this book might be my breakup with Colleen Hoover. I'm saying it now. I have been going through a phase the last couple months where I'm realizing that there's a lot of authors out there that deserve the hype that Colleen Hoover has, and I'm not saying she's not a good author, because I think that she's great, but I think that she does kind of take over like the book talk, bookstagram space, and I think that there are other authors like Kennedy Ryan that really deserve to be in the spotlight like that. And so I think that this may be the last book that I read from her, at least for a while. There's not really any others that I want to read that I haven't read already, and we'll see if she releases other books, like if I decide to pick them up. But as of right now, I'm pretty content in just being done with her for a while. But this follows our two main characters, Miles and Tate, and Miles has a lot of trauma that has not been dealt with, and Tate is just trying to live her life basically. And so they take on kind of a friends with benefits type relationship, and Miles has these rules about don't fall in love with me, don't ask about my past, this is strictly friends with benefits, don't get any sort of like feelings. And of course Tate gets feelings and is trying to figure out what's going on, and then we find out the reveal at the end, which I guessed, which was really kind of a disappointment. And I just didn't feel like I got that much out of it. It was just like a sad, smutty novel. I mean, it was fine, but it was just kind of a solid 3-star for me. I do have to say, I listened to the audiobook on this one, and the narrator for Miles, especially in like the old, like the 6 years earlier timeline, he reminded me of Joe Goldberg from You, the show. So I was a little creeped out the whole time, and I just couldn't get past it. So I had a hard time like finding him an attractive main character because he reminded me of a serial killer. So yeah, it was great time. Okay, the next book that I read in January was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I read this book for the band book club in the city that I live in, and we actually had our meeting last night, and it was great. It was such a good time to actually get to sit down in person with people and talk about books and have like a civilized conversation about hard topics and it not become vulgar, I guess. It was just very like civilized and intelligent, and I absolutely adored it. But the book itself I did not really like. I gave it 2 stars, unfortunately. I think that it's an important topic, and I'm really grateful for the book club because I picked it up because of the book club, and if it wasn't for the book club I would have never finished it, never read it. But I was not a huge fan, and I did try to start with the TV show, and I can't do it. I might try it again, but I can't do it. But yeah, I read a classic this year. I'm happy. It was decently enjoyable. It wasn't that great though, but I do recommend it just for the topics at hand. I think that it's important. Yeah, I have very mixed thoughts on this book. And then the last book that I read in January was The Sprite and The Gardener. And this is a graphic novel that I actually heard about from Katie's Reading. And I read this book yesterday, and it's really cute. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't think that it quite got a 5-star for me just because I felt like it needed something. I was comparing it a lot to the Tea Dragon Society, which I love, and so I think that that's part of the problem. But overall, it was really enjoyable. It was a super cute graphic novel, super fast read, and I really liked it. Those are all of the books that I read in January, all 12 of them. And now, let's get into my very ambitious TBR for February. So, I realized that this is probably not all going to happen. And these are just the physical books, and I do a lot of audiobook listening and ebook reading. So usually physical books, like in last month in January, physical books was about 25% of my reading. So I don't know what I'm thinking, we'll see. But here is the list. So first things first, the book that I know I'm going to finish in February is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first time I'm reading the full series all the way through, and I am about 338 pages into this, and it's a 900-page book, but I'll definitely finish this probably within the next week or two. I'm not really rushing it because I'm enjoying the story so much, but it's so good. So good. So yeah, I am planning on finishing this book in February. The next book is another book that I'm currently reading, and this is a nonfiction book, and that is Building a Second Braid by Tiago Forte. This book is one that I've had my eye on for a while, and I got it for Christmas, so I'm just trying to like read through it. It's pretty short, but it is a lot about like taking down information and storing it in a digital space so that you don't have to use your brain power quite as much to memorize everything, which I think is such a cool concept. And I love it. Plus, I love Notion, and I'm gonna build my second brain in Notion. So if you guys are interested in me talking about my second brain when I finally finish the book and get started on it, I've kind of already started it because I already had a Notion base and I kind of knew the concept of this, but I'm gonna adjust it after I finish reading this. So if you're interested in that at all, let me know, and I'd be happy to walk you through my Notion or give any tips or tricks that I've learned or that I've found. But yeah, I'm loving it so far. The next book is one that I really hope I can get to this month, but I'm not sure because I've been saying it for the last couple of months, and that is If We Were Villians by M.L. Rio. I have heard such great things about this book. I don't know a lot about it, and I'm trying to keep it that way, so I'm not gonna have a lot to say here other than I've just heard such good things. Plus, this new cover is gorgeous, and I just really hope that I love it, and I hope that I read it this month. The next book is Finlay Donovan is Killing It, and this is by L. Cosimano, and I have been hearing everything about this book series, and I cannot believe that I've owned this book for as long as I have and have not read it yet, so I am determined to pick this up. This book follows our main character, Finlay Donovan, and she is a single mom, and she is also an author. And one day she's out with her agent or her editor or something at, I think, like lunch or a coffee shop, I'm not entirely sure, when she's talking about the novel that she's writing and talking about killing off a character, and somebody thinks that she's a hit woman, so she comes up and hires her to be a hit woman to kill her husband. And I just think that that is such an interesting concept, so I'm really excited to read it. Plus, the cover is gorgeous. That's my favorite color of pink, and with it being my birthday month, I just want to read all of the things that make me smile, and just the cover of this makes me smile, so that one hopefully we'll get to. And then the next 3 books are the rest of the Folk of the Air series. So Wicked King by Holly Black, Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, and Stolen Heir by Holly Black. I can't believe I own this book already. That's crazy to me. Usually I'm pretty behind the times, and I feel like I've picked this one up pretty fast, so I want to finish the whole reread before reading it. Do I have to do that? No. But am I going to? Yes. So these are all 300 pages. They're super quick. So I'm hoping to get to all 3 of these books within the next month. And then the last physical book that I want to read for February is kind of tentative. I'm not entirely sure that I'm actually going to read it. My best friend Shay is starting the series, and I want to reread it with her. But I might start on the second book because I have such a high TBR this month, and I'm already reading Kingdom of Ash, which is a Sarah J. Maas book. So I don't know, but I might be rereading A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm not sure. Don't hold me to it. But if I can manage it, I'm going to read this with her. And I love this book. It makes me happy. So might get to that, but we'll see. The other 2 books that I don't own that I am going to be reading in February are my 2 book club picks. So I'm going to be reading Speak, which is going to be a rough book to get through, but I am very excited. That's the Banned Book Club book pick for February. So I'm going to start reading that one probably here pretty quickly so I can have some time to absorb my thoughts. And then my Bibliophile book club book pick is A Man Called Ove, and I'm really excited to read that because I've been wanting to pick up a novel by Frederick Bachman for so long. I've read a novella by him and I really enjoyed it, so I'm just hoping to pick up a novel by him and also just fall in love with it. And then another book that I'm hoping to read is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I am about 25% of the way through the audiobook, but I just got my book of the month, and I added that book on as an add-on. So I might go back and like highlight and annotate it. I haven't fully decided which format I want to read it on, so I kind of paused my audiobook. But I do want to finish that one as well in February. So that is my very ambitious February TBR and my 12 books that I read in January. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Let me know down below which books you are wanting to read in February, or if you've read any of the books that I want to read and what your thoughts are. And I will see you guys on Monday with my next video. Bye.